Hey, everyone. Thank you for joining our call today. Just a reminder to please place your phones on mute when not asking a question. Also, on behalf of the Caps and PR department and our organization, we hope everyone is doing well and taking care of themselves and their loved ones during this time of uncertainty. To our media members, we are looking forward to seeing you guys soon. In the meantime, we'll do our best to do what we can to make players and staff available to you guys on these conference calls as well as Zoom. And with that, Sam Pell, if you get us started, please.
Absolutely. Hi, Mac. How are you?
Good. How you doing?
Good. I guess just wanted to check in and see how much you've talked with the team during this time, if you've checked in with players, coaches, and just kind of how everybody's been.
Yeah, I think we're in a good spot considering the circumstances. We're in constant communication with each other. I talk to Jason Service, pretty much every day or every second day to check on players if they're healthy, if they have any symptoms or complaints or any questions. We talk to conditioning coach Mark Nemish fairly regularly. We're trying to be prepared for anything that might come down the hopper on, if we get a chance to continue to play, whether it's, in June, July, or August. We try to be as best prepared as we can for that. Other than that, we have conference calls with the league. The Board of Governors has conference calls with the league. I talk to Dick Patrick regularly. I think we're trying to be prepared as much as possible for any scenario that might come down the line for us going forward.
Yeah, Brian, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, Brian, this is Richard Lebe with La Presse newspaper in Montreal. You mentioned the scenarios for maybe sometime later this summer. Just how serious is this to be maybe, thinking of playing in August or something like that?
How serious is it? Is that the question?
Yeah. Is this like a really something that's been put forward to and that people are actually, talking about seriously around the league?
Yeah, I think it's a possible scenario. Depending on how the virus plays out. I think depending on how the country, the world handles the virus, I think there is a possibility of playing end of June, July, August. I think the league is prepared. They've asked for building dates in August, so I'm assuming it's a serious consideration on their part.
Hi, Brian. This is Mark. What to you would constitute a fair season if you guys are able to get back on the ice?
I'm sorry, I missed part of that, Tarek?
Brian, what would constitute, in your opinion, a fair season if you guys are able to get back on the ice?
Yeah, it's hard to say, Tarek. Fair to me would be all teams play the same number of games, both home and away. So if you depending on the time you have when we come back or if we come back, you could set the schedule at 72, 74 games, close to possible of, home and away, if you could even those out. Mm-hmm. And then kind of go from there after that.
And as far as playoffs, what would, in your mind, be a fair awarding of the cup?
Yeah, I think again, it has to be an open. There's no set answer to it because I don't know how much time we're going to have. If we have 8 weeks, we have 10 weeks. Do we have more than 10 weeks? Depending on that time frame, and if that's even legitimate at the time, you would have to set your schedule there. So could you shorten the series? Could you shorten the end of the schedule? I think all those options are on the table, and I think it's just how the virus plays out and how we handle it, and how much time we would have to get a season in, if we could get a season in at the end.
Brian, it's Barry, guys. I wonder if Have any players or staff, Capital staff, been tested? Any symptoms that rose to the level where someone got a test, and any positives if there were?
Yeah, nothing on the players. We've had no symptoms, no sickness complaints, and we're pretty much daily checking in with players to see if they're exhibiting any.
Hey, Brian, Steve Barno here, just following up on Park's question. How strange would it be the possibility of playoffs into September, Stanley Cup being handed out then? And have you thought about the possibility of maybe the trophy not being awarded this year if you guys aren't able to resume?
Yeah, you'd like to see the cup awarded. I haven't really thought too much about it. Like everybody else in the organization, probably in society, I look at it as day to day. It seems like the situation changes day to day on where we're at and where we're headed. So it's, I try and stay in that mindset. We try and take care of our guys. You try and take care of your family at home and kind of move on from that.
Brian, this is Jason. If the league is able to resume play and at least get a playoffs in, how do you feel about the league jumping right into the playoff tournament versus getting a few regular season games or exhibition games or whatever in first?
Yeah, I think ideally, if the time permitted, you would like a few games. But I'd also be okay with jumping in the playoffs. I think for the benefit of the quality of play and for the players' health, ideally you're playing a few games before you enter playoffs.
Brian, this is JJ Regan. Worst case scenario, the season is canceled. Obviously, you have to have off-season plans set. I assume you have those plans set already. But how difficult is that, not knowing whether that could happen, not having the playoffs to go on, not knowing what the salary cap could be, not knowing when the draft is? How difficult is it to prepare for an off-season now with all the uncertainty?
Yeah, it is difficult. It's, I guess we talk over all the possible scenarios, and you try and, prepare mentally for anything. What happens to the cap? Does the cap go down because the revenues are going to decrease? Do they artificially keep it where it's at? So the answer to those questions puts us on pause on, your UFA negotiations. How do we proceed given both those scenarios? So those are just open-ended questions, and we discuss them, but we don't come up with any answers. As far as the draft, we talk on how we're going to have meetings, the possibility of meetings to put the list together. How do we keep our guys engaged? Do we, with the combine being canceled, can we do some phone interviews? What can we do on the video side of it? We look for ways we can stay engaged and still improving what we're doing and preparing for the draft, for free agency, for cap decisions. So we try and stay engaged with each other over this period.
Hey, Mac, this is Mike Vogel. I'm wondering, sort of like what you were just talking about with UFAs and RFAs. Those contracts typically expire at the end of June. Would those be extended if the season were extended? Has there been talk about how that would work?
Well, your question didn't come through very well.
I'm just wondering about RFA and UFA contracts typically run out at the end of June. But if you guys are going to be playing into July and August, has there been conversation about those contracts? Would they be unilaterally extended? Would that be something that would have to be worked out with the PA, or how would that work?
Yeah, I think the league brought that up in the last call, that it would be extended through August if that was the case. If that's the route we were going down, the contracts would, I guess it would have to be approved by the PA still too, but they would go to the end of August if that was the date they chose.
And just to follow up on that, if I may, you guys, this game is such a cyclical game where, every month of the year is devoted to something specific, and the way you guys plan out everything, both in the short term and the long term, how does this whole thing, this is something you obviously can plan for. How does this impact going forward? Like a number of things, just the start of next season, the expansion draft, your long-term planning, and the fact that it could wind up sinking the salary cap a little bit, for the next year or two, which would really lead to a lot of repercussions around the league.
Yeah, I don't think we have answers to any of those questions. I think the league looks for, people to voice opinions on what they would like. Everybody plays out the different scenarios. If we did get through August, could we have a couple months off and then start back up in November? What do they do with that cap number? I think there's so many questions, even questions we haven't even considered, that'll pop up given whatever the result is at the end of this. Again, the league's been very open for anybody asking questions or giving recommendations. So it's all we can do is try and prepare for different scenarios that we see coming and do the best we can do.
Brian, this is Tarek again. Do you have a feel for? Let us know the split of whether players have gone back to Europe or gone back to their homes. How many are still here in DC? And do you have any recommendations to the players?
I think in the beginning we recommended everybody stay close to home base because of the uncertainty. We wanted to be around our training staff, our doctors, in case anything came up. As it's gone on longer, we've had, I think, nine players have left, with the other 14 still here. Mostly family considerations. People wanted to be around their families. And then given the uncertainty of the timeline, I think, it made sense to let people go.
Thanks.
And it's Ben Raby here. Any idea with the players in terms of how they are able to train, stay in shape? It's a challenge across the league. And some players, I guess, have their own gyms at home if they're so lucky. Other players don't. They obviously don't have access to ice. What are they doing to stay in shape, to try to stay in the necessary shape to come back?
Yeah, I think it's our strength and conditioning coach has sent out weekly programs, and he's tried to, change it up and, different ways they can maintain the conditioning without going to, a public gym or, some guys have different equipment. Some guys have bikes, some guys have treadmills, some guys don't have anything. So he sent videos or YouTube videos of exercises they can use. So we've tried to monitor, or Mark Nemes has tried to monitor and give creative ways to work out to most of our players, or all of our players.
It makes for a challenge. This is hypothetical, of course, but if they do return this summer or a few weeks or months from now, how much of a potential challenge is that it's not like a typical off-season training? How much potential time could they need on the ice to get back into the necessary shape for some potential high-intensity games?
Yeah, I think it's going to be a challenge. I think it's, we're going to end up being at least 2 months off, and to come in after, at various levels of conditioning, some of it out of the players' hands, that, it's going to be a hard thing to accomplish, to get players in game shape and to, send them into a playoff-type situation almost immediately. So it's going to be a hard thing to accomplish.
Brian, it's Tom Gallitti.
Go ahead,
Tom Gallitti. Just was wondering, the way the team was playing before the break, did you have any thoughts on that? And I mean, obviously it's secondary when you with everything else right now, but did you have a lot of concern about that? And maybe in some ways is the break a little bit of help? Well, obviously you don't want to break for this long, but maybe could it help you guys kind of reset a little bit?
Yeah, I think, the same as, we mentioned earlier, Tom, that, I don't think we've been happy with the way we've played since, probably the end of December. In my mind, there was a slight uptick near the end, the last few games, but overall, I think, it was, there's a sense of frustration and a sense of we should be playing a lot better than we were the past period of time. And I think, whether the break helps or hurts, that's a tough one to answer. I think, when we come back, I think we have issues that need to be addressed, and we're being addressed at the end.
Brian, this is Tarek. I mean, if the season doesn't resume, have you given any thought to how disappointing it would be to have another season of the Obi era kind of slip away here?
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's frustrating on his part, but I mean, he's accomplishing things that are pretty incredible, regardless of the seasons. Whether we play another 10, 15 games or not. I think it's impressive what he's done. We have a lockout season plus, the end of this season not being played. I don't think it makes sense to dwell on that type of thing. And I think it's, we just recognize what he's doing and continues to do and will continue to do going forward.
Mac, this is Vogues again. Have you checked in with your scouts, both the pro and the amateur group, just to see how they're doing and holding up? This has got to be pretty jarring for them to have this season come to such an abrupt stop.
Yeah, I know the amateur guys. I mean, they had some big tournaments at the end that got canceled on them, and it's a big part of their year. I think they always look forward to the tournaments and finalizing their list and reports, and it kind of got grinded to a halt at the end of the season for us. I talked to Ross a lot about what we can do to keep guys engaged. The use of video. Can we do a little more phone interviews? I mean, we look for ways to stay engaged creatively, and to see if we can, improve on our process of finding players.
Brian, Ben asked you earlier, I guess, about kind of what this might be like with a couple of months off potentially or more than that. What kind of hockey do you expect, given that teams usually want practice and time together? What kind of hockey do you expect if and when the season resumes?
Yeah, I mean, I think players adapt. I think timing and speed and systems play usually takes a few weeks. I mean, it's no different than a training camp coming in, except it'll be ramped up the intensity part quicker. I think players will adapt to it. I think it might be scrambly at first, but it'll be accelerated because of the seriousness and what's at stake if you're playing for a championship or if you jump right into the playoffs. I think it'll be hard, but players will adapt to it.
Brian, it's Tom Gallitti. And someone else go ahead.
Go ahead, Tom.
I was going to say,
Brian,
there's still
just a real quick. Go ahead, Tom.
Is there still a hope, Brian, that you could have some small groups skating before there is if this all goes that where there's going to be a training camp? Can you have some small groups skating before that, just because it's going to be maybe a month and a half without guys even being on the ice? Is that a hope still, or?
Yeah, I mean, we've talked about that scenario taking place where, we get on the other side of the virus curve, and it's, there's beginnings of you can have small groups. So, could we structure something at, Kettler where we're bringing in 3-4 guys at a time? How do we handle, sanitizing the training room, the equipment room? I mean, we've gone through these scenarios to be prepared if that becomes the case. If they say in June, okay, you can start doing this, as an organization, we want to be prepared for it. So that is a possibility, and we're discussing it internally.
Brian, it's Barry again. I wonder, kind of a simple question, do you miss it? Do you miss the games, the sport?
Yeah, I do. It's been a different. It's amazing how your life just comes to a halt, and there's all the things you do day to day is it doesn't matter anymore. And all of a sudden, there's a big picture, there's a reality going on, and all the little things that you're concerned about on a daily basis don't really matter much anymore. So all of a sudden, you're finding yourself, you have time, and you're doing stuff around the house. You're touching base with family more. You're doing more family things. It's a change in lifestyle, and it's a change in probably priorities.
Ryan, it's Samantha. Have you gotten a chance to be around your family more during this time in the spot?
Yeah. We have 2 daughters and grandkids in Minneapolis. We came home to Minneapolis after it looked like it was going to be a little longer than we originally thought. So we've came back here, and we're spending time with them and trying to get through it together.